Rob the rich to give to the poor? This seems like a pretty bad message for someone like Disney, right? But this was one of my childhood favorite movies growing up, so there's gotta be more to the story, right? Let's climb inside Disney's movie vault and find everything you missed in Disney's movie, Robin Hood.
Hurry, hide it, quick! Here I come, ready or not. Well, greetings from your friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Uh-oh.
Robin Hood was the 21st Disney animation movie released back in 1973, and back then Disney didn't have a lot of movies yet, and they were still learning themselves how to perfect their own movies. And for this movie, they only had a $15 million budget. I know that may sound like a lot of money, but keep in mind, Disney recently spent over $150 million to make Moana, so that kind of puts this into perspective. To speed up production time and to save on the cost of the movie, one thing they did was to rob scenes from previous movies to give into this movie. If you watch when Maid Marian's partying it up in the forest, it's the same exact dance scene that we see in Snow White when she was dancing with Dopey and all the other guys in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs.
That was fun!
There's Deja Vu.
Originally, the Priest Friar Chuck was going to be a pig, but then Disney changed it to a badger because they realized a pig might be a tad bit offensive and seen as some sort of a hidden message or something towards the religious community, and that would not be cool. Also, originally Robin Hood was going to be more of a Western theme, so Disney casted a bunch of people that were known back in those days for Westerns. This, of course, would help give the movie a more Western vibe. For example, Nutsy,
1 o'clock!
Friar Tuck, the Sheriff,
What in tarnation you trying to do?
or even Trigger, all famous Western actors. However, eventually the Western theme idea faded away. A voice you might recognize in the movie is Little John. That's because before making Robin Hood, the voice of that big friendly bear was Phil Harris, who just a few years earlier voiced none other than our favorite bear, Baloo from The Jungle Book.
Yes.
In the attempt to speed up the production of the movie, we also see Baloo and Little John dancing the same exact way, all the way down to the hair on his chinny chin chin.
I wanna be like you.
I wanna walk like you. Talk like
There's Deja Vu.
Hey, just talking over movies to say hi, they just talking over movies to say hi. What the frick are you guys doing?
Little John, even at one point he had a hidden Mickey on his nose. When he's pretending to be the sheriff during the jailbreak, there's a brief moment where we can see it on his nose. There. Trigger the Vulture, which is one of Sheriff's guards, also looks a lot like one of the vultures in the Jungle Book as well. However, he's not voiced by the same person.
Let's do something.
Even though Monica Evans, the voice of Maid Marian, and Carol Shelley, the voice of Lady Fluck, didn't voice anything in Jungle Book, they did, however, voice the two geese and Aristocats. And we even see recycled dance moves from Aristocats made it into Robin Hood. These two ladies also played as sisters in a Broadway play and the movie The Odd Couple.
There's Deja Vu.
Even though Sir Hiss has hypnotizing power like Kaa the snake in the Jungle Book, they were not voiced by the same person. However, some might say that hidden Mickeys everywhere in Disney's movies was a way of hypnotizing us. And if that's their plan, it seems to be working. There's several hidden Mickeys in Robin Hood, and Little John's nose isn't the only one. When Robin Hood burns the stew because he's daydreaming about Maid Marian, look near the pot and you will see a smoky Mickey. During the first robbery against Prince John, Little John and Robin Hood crash into each other, dropping all the gold. Some of the fallen gold seems to be Mickey. When the Sheriff of Nottingham is strolling through the castle, we can see a hint of Mickey on the side of the chair. If you've been to any of Disney's parks recently, you may notice that they have similar hidden Mickeys on the benches in the park. Only in the park, it's a lot more obvious. Another idea they had that never made it in the movie was to show pictures of food to the poor people to help them not feel hungry. That was the government's solution to people that are starving. In the original stories of Robin Hood, Robin and Little John met when they both tried to cross a log over a river and ended up fighting to see who would actually get to go first. Disney, of course, had to put their own friendly spin on this scene. That's when we see Robin and John meet for the first time in this movie, They're both trying to cross the same log, and instead, they encourage the other one to go first. Oh, ain't that cute? Disney has a group of animator legends known as Disney's 9 Old Men. Robin Hood was the last movie all 9 of them would be able to see completed to production alive. That's a sad, depressing fact. One thing Pixar and Disney does when making their movies is research everything. It seems Robin Hood, though, wasn't researched as much as the ones we see today. Either that, or they decided to bend the rules for the sake of making the story more entertaining. But this movie is based on Prince John and King Richard, who is obviously represented by King Lionheart. And King Richard ruled from 1189 to 1199. So let's round up and say that the movie took place in year 1200. Remember that, year 1200. Here we see the kids are singing Happy Birthday to Skippy, even though the Happy Birthday song wasn't written until 1893. Which makes me wonder, what do you think they sang to people on their birthday before 1893? Badminton is a fun, wholesome sport to play. If you are playing it after the 1870s, of course, since it didn't exist before the 1870s. We all know that snakes aren't full of helium, and we're going to ignore the fact that you can't breathe in air from a balloon that you're inside, then blow into the balloon that you're inside to make more air appear in the balloon. But what we can't ignore is air can't make a balloon float. You need something lighter than air.
But helium wasn't discovered till 1868. So what's in the balloons?
Oh, and speaking of balloons, balloons weren't made till 1824. Otto the blacksmith broke his left leg and had it wrapped in a cast.
Let me give you a hand.
That's cool and all, but these things weren't commercially made till 1931. Wait a second, I thought it was his left leg. Now he has a broken right leg? Is he faking it? Is this an insurance scam? He's probably just mooching off Prince John. That's right, there's quite a few oops in Robin Hood. When Robin is scamming the money away from Prince John, Robin is barefooted. Bare feet, barefoot. He's barefoot. But then he's wearing shoes all of a sudden in the very next scene. Then takes the ring off one hand, then sucks the rubies off the rings on the other hand. Then, moments later, the rings are back. Or then they're gone. Now there's a couple rings. They're always disappearing. Luckily for him, they're always reappearing. And Prince John's crown can't make up its mind what color rubies it's gonna have. Sometimes they're green, sometimes they're red, sometimes they're both.
Secret? What secret?
Fun little fact, Ale is beer, by the way. So this slithery snake is drunk.
Oh, there you are, old boy.
Prince John also can't seem to make up his mind if he has 3 fingers or 4. But that's okay, because sometimes the sheriff gets an extra finger to him as well. Even though normally the sheriff only has 4 fingers, except for in this scene, of course. When Robin is burning the little food, let's look at Little John a little bit closer. He's hanging up the laundry, obviously. Look at the order it's in though. We have a white shirt closest to the tree, then a yellow shirt, and then red socks. Now the white shirt closest to the tree turned yellow. And now Little John's hanging up the yellow shirt again. This one's an oldie and a classic, and I can't imagine not ever seeing the movie, but I feel like some of you out there probably never saw the movie. So in great fear, I'm gonna ask this next question. Have you ever seen Robin Hood? Disney's Robin Hood. I have to specify because there's like a billion different Robin Hoods, and apparently we're coming out with a newer Robin Hood. Vote yes or no. Have you ever seen Disney's Robin Hood? Now back to the little bloopers. I don't want to call them mistakes. I don't want to be that guy. When Nutsy moves the target back, we can see it's the only target that was moved. All the other targets are still up front. But when Robin hits the target, it somehow made its way back to the front of the line in its original spot with all the other targets. Then when Robin's trying to escape, he knocks over the throne, but then when there's a tent stampede, the chair's upright again. That's convenient.
Close your sleepy little eyeballs. The Sandman's a-coming.
Who's the Sandman? That's a very good question. You might be sorry you asked. The Sandman wasn't heard of till the 1800s, by the way. And if you don't know who the original Sandman was, basically it was a story told to kids that when they were trying to go to bed, that the Sandman would throw sand in the eyes of anyone whose eyes were open, and that the sand would make your eyes fall out of your forehead. Then he collected up all your little eyeballs and went back to the moon where his nest was to feed all of his hungry little children. That's right, they ate your eyeballs. That's a great bedtime story to get Timmy to go to sleep. So the purpose, obviously, of the Sandman would be to scare the children into not wanting to open their eyes while they're laying in bed. And this is why Robin was telling the sheriff about the Sandman. Of course, the movie does have quite a few accuracies.
Yes, no one sits higher than the king.
I don't know if he would punch him or not. Quite possibly he would hang him. Another fun little Easter egg is during the end of the archery contest when they are trying to catch Lady Cluck, the music we hear is actually the fight song from University of Wisconsin that they play at their football games. This is why it looks like she's kind of in a football game, running from all the defender, linebacker, quarterback people. I don't know, I don't watch football. The mouse gave her very last coin to the church, and in the Bible there was a poor woman who gave all she had to the church as well. Of course, the girl in the Bible had 2 coins. She was twice as rich! But if you watch the mouse closely, it doesn't sound like the keys he's pushing go with the beat of the music. That's because he's faking it. Fake news! If you look closely at the knobs, the organ has a stop and a start button. Of course, the stop button on an organ isn't like we're thinking stop playing the music. It actually controls the air in the organ. That's also where the cool phrase, pull out all the stops comes from. An organ traditionally had several stop levers, and the more levers you pulled, the louder the organ got. So if you pulled out all the stops, the organ would be the loudest possible noise! The neighbors are gonna love that! When Robin and Maid Marian finally get their alone time together, we see them next to a river with lightning bugs. This reminds me of the river ride through the Pirates of the Caribbean ride that opened just a few years prior to Robin Hood's release date. The Pirates of the Caribbean ride was also the last ride Walt Disney ever worked on himself personally. However, I couldn't confirm whether or not the Fireflies were actually on the ride since day one, or if they were some sort of added upgrade in the future. Another movie reference was when Little John was saying, "Hey, who's flying the umbrella?"
Hey, who's driving this flying umbrella?
This is clearly a reference to Mary Poppins, who came out just a few years prior to Robin Hood. Unlike the original Dumbo, these Dumbos can't fly. You've heard me talk about the famous Wilhelm scream before. But did you know that there's also a famous sound effect called Castle Thunder? And it was originally in the movie Frankenstein back in 1931. And since then it's been used in many movies, TV shows, and cartoons. When the Rhino Guards are crashing into the castle wall, we can hear the famous Castle Thunder sound effect.
That's really something.
I want to give a shout out to M. Blake on YouTube for finding this next Easter egg because I probably wouldn't be able to find this one on my own. When Alan Adele is singing in prison, it's not the first time we see this situation playing out in the movie. The scene was foreshadowed from an earlier scene when the sheriff collects taxes from Otto the blacksmith. Even though they aren't singing in this scene, the same song is playing in the background without the lyrics. For a moment, the words they are saying line up perfectly with the song that's being played in the background.
Wait up and fly. But you're way behind with your taxes, too.
Oh, have a heart, Sheriff. Can't you see he's laid up?
Wow.
Also, as the sheriff's walking away, he's singing to the beat of the song that only the audience can hear.
They call me a slob, but I do my job.
So he likely has arrested Alan Adele before because we already know he likes singing the trendy songs.
Got it all wrong, Hiss. The sniveling, groveling, weaselly me.
And he knows them word for word. So what about the whole take from the rich and give to the poor?
Are we good guys or bad guys?
That's not really the message in Robin Hood. The real message is that the government was corrupt, and Robin was simply taking back from the government what didn't belong to them and giving it back to the people the government stole it from. And keep in mind, Disney knows all too well about paying taxes. Disney pays hundreds of millions of dollars every single year in taxes, and that's just for one of their theme parks. That's not including movie sales and their other parks, and random Apple bags in the grocery store that have nothing to do with Disney, but for some reason I see Mickey Mouse on it. Why, Disney? But on a kinder side, when Friar Tuck was in prison, he still had forgiveness in his heart, even though he's been there for several weeks. And it seems like we have a modern day Prince John who's stealing all of our money right now today with taxes. He's stealing from the rich and he's stealing from the poor. He's stealing from everybody. But there's a way that you can be like Robin Hood today. Remember how there was almost a funny clip about showing paintings of food to the poor so they're less hungry? Unfortunately, this isn't a joke in real life. Sadly, there are people all around the world who don't even have access to basic life necessities, like clean drinking water. Thankfully, we have heroes among us like World Vision who are installing wells and providing fresh drinking water and food for people who have nothing. And because World Vision is a non-profit, that means that when you donate to World Vision, it's like you're taking your tax dollars away from Prince John and giving it to those in need the most. If you have extra money and you can afford it, you can click on the little eye up in the corner to give your tax-deductible donation directly to World Vision. But don't worry if you can't afford to give to World Vision. Don't feel bad. You can still be a hero to the people around you. Try to find somebody in your classroom or at work that's all alone and try to be their friend. Regardless of where you are in your journey on the road to life, there's one thing we can all do to make the world a better place, and it doesn't cost a single cent. You know what it is. Remember, share a smile, they are contagious.